Lubrication points on a motorcycle. When you buy a motorcycle, you're very excited, you love keeping it clean, but the truth of it is that you are gonna have to oil certain places because the oil gets washed away with all the cleaning and OCD details that you guys do. Here I have an oil bottle. This oil bottle will be used to lubricate certain points in my motorcycle which are critical. First, the hinge over here needs to be lubricated for the clutch, and when you pull in the clutch cable, you will see that there is a gap over here. In this gap you must put oil so that the clutch cable remains lubricated. People carry around their clutch cables spare in the bike, whereas my bike has been run 30,000 kilometers and never have I had to do any sort of maintenance on the clutch, any sort of adjustment whatsoever. The second point I would like to lubricate is the throttle, the brake over here, the brake lever. When you press the brake, this screw which has a pin over here takes a lot of strain. When that factory grease wears out, it is necessary to either open this bolt or put some sort of lubrication on it. The third thing I would like to mention is when you accelerate, every single time you move the throttle grip, there is wear and tear that happens between the throttle grip and your handlebars. Between these gaps over here and here respectively, you must oil the motorcycle. Then these foot pegs, it may not be for every motorcycle or bullets in particular, but when this moves up and down, you must make sure that the lubrication is present on the pin over here and on the spring to prevent rust. Then behind this, behind the heel plate over here, we will find that there is a hinge where we need to put some lubrication for the brake. Every time the brake is pressed, that hinge moves. Then over here, right where the brake pivot is, every time the brake moves, you need to lubricate that as now. I would also like to mention that the rear foot peg needs to be lubricated. It has a ball over here, right over here, where if you put lubrication, it will prevent the rear foot peg from getting stuck in its place. Same goes with this one. Now left hand side foot peg also has a pivot which you need to lubricate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then behind the gear shifter, there is grease inside this bolt which keeps it lubricated, so that it's not necessary to remove this bolt and lubricate it. However, you could put some oil on the edges over here just to keep it free moving. Same goes with this and this ball joint. Whatever you do, make sure that you remove the excess lube from every place. One place I would not recommend to put any lubrication is on the mirror. I put oil over here and the mirrors move very easily, so that is not supposed to happen. Another point for lubrication would be the fuel tank cap over here, as well as where your ignition key goes. Instead of putting graphite like most people do, you can put some oil in this. Another place which is commonly neglected by people is right under the gas tank. So you open the gas tank and as you can see, this locking mechanism sometimes gets sticky. It becomes very difficult to open and close your tank. Then there is a O-ring over here. This rubber seal is meant to secure your petrol in place, and it makes sure that no amount of water gets into your fuel tank. This is a common issue with KTM users. every time you check your oil level, since I have a dipstick, every time I remove this, I clean the area around this and I lubricate the O-ring which is present behind the oil filler cap. That prevents it from tearing or letting any excess oil from the engine escape out just because the seal is compromised. Another place you can also put some lubrication is inside the seat lock where your key goes. That is important as it is used pretty often and it is exposed, so any sort of water can cause rust inside the very ever so tiny mechanisms inside this. Then comes the seat lock mechanism itself. You must make sure that you lubricate these points as well. It definitely comes factory greased, but over time it can wear out. Secondly, to remove the front seat, there is a quick release option over here. In my case, I always lubricate the cable over here so that it never gets cut or breaks any of its strands. Next up on my list would be the main seat lock over here. You must make sure that it is moving freely and is well lubricated, otherwise it may jam up eventually and will become a real problem to get open in the future. Contrary to what many people may think, you must also use silicone grease, or it is also called dielectric grease. You have to use it over your battery terminals so that they do not catch any sort of rusting, or it will increase your battery life. Just because the heat is less in the battery, rust causes resistance. Always remember that. As I move the clutch cable, you can see that the mechanism moves on this side, and wherever the linkages are, it must be lubricated over there to prevent wear and tear. One last spot which I would like to mention which should be lubricated is your side stand over here. Right where it pivots, you must lubricate that in order to prevent any sort of play in your side stand which would be unwanted for obvious reasons. Your bike would lean over more. One thing that people always forget is that the spring needs to be lubricated as well, because first of all it may rust, and if it doesn't rust then it may get sticky mechanism, like it may not rotate freely on the hinge points. So make sure the springs are lubricated. The springs are present here on this, as well as the rider side foot peg over here. And for the brake, there is a spring right behind the brake which must be lubricated.